Hello, this is Catherine from Accelerated Reader, reading books for you. Today, I will be reading The Moon and the Magic Box. Written by Michael Ross, illustrated by Magdalena Adic. Before I begin reading, I would like to give a big thanks to the author for sending me this book to read on my channel. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The Moon and the Magic Box by Michael Ross. This book cover was lovingly designed and produced by Magdalena Adic. The moon bathes everyone with a magic light. If only we knew. Dedications. I dedicate this book to my sons, Aiden, Ben, and Oliver, and to my brother Kevin. To my beta readers, Monica Barnes, Simon Tomarad, Borna Clemen, and Lily Hunt, without whose help this book wouldn't be the work of art it is. To my illustrator and book cover designer, Magdalena Adic. About the author. It was a clairvoyant that told Michael that he should write a book. The first, a comedy called Memoirs from the SBC. The second, a true life story called Just 5 More Minutes, which won the 2019 Independent Audiobook Awards. But from when he could remember, he always had a strong interest in sci-fi and fantasy, and had a voracious appetite for epic fantasy, in particular. So, the Wand Chronicles trilogy is an amalgamation of his creative ideas, thoughts, and experiences. He has also written children's books for 5 to 7-year-olds, the Arnie and Mia series, a collection of scary short stories for young adults. And now we have a book brim full of a unique magical adventure for 10 to 15-year-olds. The dark moon, the Crodoyo crystals that kept the moon shining brightly, have been stolen by the Dammers. Troy and Desmi. Nesbit. Prologue. As Troy sleepily woke up, he slowly stretched out and yawned. He loved his feather bed, his creaky old wooden window, and through it the view over the meadow. There was an apple orchard to the left, and now the maturing apples were coloring up till splashes of red filled the trees, and in the distance, on a clear day, the sparkling hint of the sea could be seen nestled between 2 towering rolling cliffs. Suddenly, Troy froze. He was listening intently now for the telltale pitter-patter of his dog's claws scrabbling up the oldie-worldy, creaky, circular wooden stairs leading up to his bedroom in the farmhouse. Troy's room was at the very top. He never closed his door. He always left it slightly open for one reason only, and that was so Nesbit could find his way in whenever he wanted. Troy jumped back into his bed and buried himself under his duvet, pulling it around him as tightly as he could. A few seconds later, his bedroom door flung open with a crash, and into the room bounded Nesbit, the scruffiest mongrel you would ever hope to see. He was unusual in that he had one brown eye and one blue eye. The blue eye wasn't just blue, it was ice blue, and anyone who met him would be invariably drawn to his eye. To Troy, it was a magical eye, full of mystery. It didn't suffer fools gladly, but was compassionate, forgiving, and loving. Troy called that eye the all-seeing eye because if you thought you could fool Nesbit, for example, by hiding his favorite cookie treat in your hand, that eye would figure out immediately where that biscuit was and would stare at your hand until you relented and let him have it. It always had to end with Troy throwing the cookie high in the air to watch the Nesbit flip a somersault and catch it in mid-air. It was still a battle of wills, but Nesbit was still the winner. For a second or two, Troy could just about hear that Nesbit had stopped and was looking around Troy's bedroom for him. His panting was a dead giveaway to Troy, who would be trying his best to stifle his laughter. Cocooned under his duvet, Troy waited for Nesbit to jump on top of the duvet and feel him pawing away, trying to get to Troy underneath. It always had Troy laughing out loud, and in the end, he threw back his duvet, and Nesbit was on him licking his face and nuzzling his ears. Troy would extend his arms around Nesbit's neck and would pull him close for a cuddle. Oh, how they both loved those cuddles. And Troy would always finish off the morning's greeting with, "Hey, Nezzy," Troy's pet name for Nesbit. "You are my favorite dog in the whole wide world." Not that he had another dog, and gently rub his ears. The bond between the two was super strong, and neither could imagine life without the other. Troy was 12, but only just. He had thick, slightly scruffy, golden blonde hair, a few wisps of which used to slip down over his left eye. He had a habit of running his fingers through his hair and flicking his fringe back. He had those sorts of light blue eyes that were attractive and inviting. His skin color always had a lovely, slightly tanned appearance, enhanced by the summer sun, and his clothes were casual, well-worn, and somewhat uncoordinated. But it didn't matter one iota. He was one of those that looked good in anything he wore. He was very well built and toned for his age. He lived on his mom's farm, and the hefting of objects like bales of straw had already started to develop his body. Because of his handsome good looks and confident air, he was already catching the admiring looks of all the girls at school. They would collect in little groups as he walked past them. He would glance over at them, give them his crooked smile, and the girls would giggle and furiously send each other text messages. One or two would have the courage to shout out, "Hi, Troy!" And when he whispered back, "You okay?" they would blush and try to merge into the background. However, there was this one girl, to Troy, an exceptional girl. She was not his girlfriend, and he made sure everyone knew this, even if they hadn't also asked the question. The fact that she was the one girl in the school that all the boys wanted to date made no difference. She only had eyes for Troy. To Troy, she wasn't a girl as much, but the best friend he could imagine. She understood him, his ways, his passion for things he liked. Right from the start, Troy had told her he wasn't interested in having a girlfriend, and luckily for him, she caught an edge on quickly and decided to be his best friend. Of course, it was the next best thing to being his girlfriend. Even so, secretly, for Desmi, her world would be complete if Troy ever asked her to be his girlfriend. In many ways, she was biding her time. Desmi, like Troy, was Cornish-born and bred and almost 13. Desmi's mom and dad christened her with an old Cornish girl's name, which was the Melza, but she hated it. As soon as she could, she changed it to Desmi. She told everyone that Demelza sounded like a witch, and she certainly didn't look like one. No one dared argue with that statement. No doubt about it, she was a natural stunner, long blonde hair that maybe was overly bleached from the sun. A beautiful natural smile with teeth that seemed too perfect to be true. In a way, like Troy, she was a casual girl with a lovely, welcoming personality that shone out everywhere she went. Some of the other girls were insanely envious and jealous, and periodically tried to spread false stories about her and Troy. But when she heard them, she always laughed them off. To her, the rumors were like water off a duck's back. They never ever rattled her. As far as Troy was concerned, knowing that Desmi loved Nesbit as much as he did, she had to be a part of his life. And so it was, on that already warm, balmy day on a farm in Crankington Haven on the west Cornish coast of England, that Troy was up. He would throw down some brekkie and be fussed over by his mother, Glynis, and she told him he would only have to help for a couple of hours on the farm. Well, it was the start of the summer holidays. Then he had planned to meet up with Desmi and chillax. But already the evening was going to be one of those evenings that Troy loved so much. Desmi, Nesbit, and Troy would walk up to the mushroom field just to the side of Bramblewood. They would undo and spread out a bale of hay, lie on their backs, and look at the stars in the sky. And, if they were lucky, catch the occasional shooting star. Even Nesbit would lie on his back, and they would giggle, convinced. Nesbit's blue eye was watching the sky as intently as they were. They would lie there, relaxed in each other's company, chatting about anything and everything. Every so often, their bare arms would touch, sending a little electric shock through both of them. They never let on to each other, of course. They knew it was special, special to them both. Little did they know, though, that something unpredictable and challenging would happen that balmy summer evening. Something that would change their lives dramatically in so many ways. Forever. Tanlaw Radar Observatory and Research Station, Edinburgh, Scotland. Chapter 1. First Sighting. Nestled in the hills surrounding Edinburgh in Scotland is the Tanlaw Radar Observatory. Close to it, protected by the latest military security systems, there is a small secret, prefabricated building. From the outside, you would wonder what all the fuss is about. It resembled an old weaver's cottage, but the electric fencing, powerful security lights, patrols by military police officers with Alastaeans and security lights would make you think twice about venturing any nearer out of curiosity. Even the notices tied to the first ring of fences. There were 3 rings of fencing in total, each topped with vicious razor wire, warned of dire consequences if you attempted to force your way in. The only hint of what the wooden building was responsible for was on a massive military headboard fixed above the sophisticated metal gateway at one end of the ring of fencing. In stenciled red lettering, it read, Northern Strategic Command, Alien First Contact, followed by the letters NSC, AFC. And that was it. No other hint to suggest what it was concerned with. If you went inside, there were lots of PCs, old wooden tables covered in papers with mathematical scribblings, empty food trays, pizza boxes, some with half-eaten pizzas still inside, half-filled crossword puzzles, mugs of all sizes and shapes containing cold or various stages of dehydrated coffee remains. It was very untidy and light levels were pretty low, so the computer screens seemed brighter. There were some old, partially ripped posters of football teams, but the majority of the walls had whiteboards screwed onto them. There were all sorts of scientific calculations scribbled over them. You could tell right away that whoever worked here were typical untidy scientists. Usually there would be 2 staff, dressed not in military clothes as you may expect, but in very casual jeans and t-shirts. The dozen mugs or so dotted around were all in a dodgy state of condition. This particular evening, Ralph and Josh were playing a game of chess. They are very evenly matched, but they were also totally absorbed in the game. Each had moves in their heads, which they were sure would lead to victory. They looked a scruffy pair, needed haircuts, and had stubble on their chins. Their jeans had frayed holes all over them, together with t-shirts that certainly hadn't seen a washing machine for a few weeks. You could be forgiven for thinking they had been marooned on a desert island for 6 months. In the middle of this, 2 red lights started flashing on one of the monitors, shortly followed by a high-pitched siren pumping out an intermittent warning signal. For a moment or two, Josh and Ralph carried on playing, but it was Josh that suddenly reacted to the piercing noise and intermittent red lights. He jumped up, chess pieces tipping onto the floor, to scramble over the monitor that was flashing behind Ralph. "Oh, come on," said Ralph to Josh. "You're such a sore loser," before he too realized the warning system had activated, and so he also jumped up and joined Josh. Both were peering intently at the monitor. After a few seconds' silence, Josh had deactivated the lights and siren. They looked at each other, then back at the monitor. To one side of them, there was a machine churning out papers covered in advanced mathematical equations, figures, and graphs. Without looking, Ralph tore off the sheet pouring out of the printer, quickly wiping all the rubbish on the tables onto the floor with a grand sweep of his arms, then laid out the paper on the table. He straightened it out with his hands and was looking intently at the information printed on the sheets. Josh quickly joined him, and again, in silence, they were both examining the contents of the papers. They stopped, stood up, and stared at each other. They both started speaking at once and over one another. "What the hell is that entering our orbit? It has to be alien. We have to follow protocol and phone Central Command. We have to be sure, don't we? Look, it's following a planned trajectory." Simultaneously, they both reached for the old-fashioned red telephone on a shelf above them. As a result, the phone flipped into the air and landed on the floor. "Ralph!" shouted Josh. "Calm down for Pete's sake. I will phone Strategic Command, okay?" Ralph nodded and took a step back. They both were shaking a little. Josh put the phone to his ear. He didn't have to press any buttons. As soon as he lifted the receiver, a connection was made. A distant voice on the other end of the phone said, "Identify." Josh was now flipping his way through the emergency contact journal for the correct response. Again, the voice on the other end of the phone insisted, "Identify." Ralph had now joined in, found the right response, and pointed it out to Josh. "NSC AFC 547768, code red, emergency." There was silence for 5 or 6 seconds. Then a voice came online. You could tell the voice was military. It wasn't pleasant in the slightest. It had a no-nonsense, commanding feel about it. "Major Cringeworthy." "Yes? What is it?" "It's Josh Failsworth at the NSC AFC, sir. There is an unidentified object that is entering our atmosphere. I can confirm that the object is not a meteorite or any other form of natural phenomena. The calculations show quite clearly that it originated from the moon, sir. In fact, and this we can't understand, it seems to have originated from inside the moon. Its trajectory is calculated. In other words, it is not haphazard. It has taken a specific mathematical path, which means it will not skip or slingshot from our gravitational pull. We strongly believe it is a sentient object, sir. Possibly an alien craft of some sort. As far as we can tell, it is approximately a square-shaped 3-foot box." "And have you calculated where this supposed alien object will land?" Again, Josh and Ralph peered at the monitor and sheets of maps, and Josh replied, "As far as we can tell, sir. It is due to land somewhere on the Cornish coastline, close to an area called... Ralph pointed to an OS map. Crankington Haven. Specifically, there is a forest called Bramblewood, slightly to the northeast of Crankington Haven, which would appear to be the first point of contact if the object continues on its present trajectory. Right, said Cringeworthy. Send me the detailed OS map coordinates. I'm designating this top secret, understand? Keep me updated every 5 minutes. Got it? Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir, said Josh. Beads of sweat were already beginning to appear on his forehead. He stood there, transfixed, for a few seconds, then put down the phone. He blew out a sigh of relief, then joined Ralph to make copious notes from the reams of calculations that were pouring out of the printers and filling the monitor screens. The fireball containing Pangi and the magic box on its way to Bramblewood, Cornwall, England. Stay tuned for Chapter 2. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book.